Just yesterday, I covered a story involving some new analysis from Michael Driscoll, who talked about how, as of January 16th, roughly 10 to 15% of all PlayStation 5s are estimated to have been scalped and resold. Based on the data that he found, around 157,000 PS5s were sold on eBay and StockX, and then that's without including the 3 to 8% sold on OfferUp, Facebook, and Craigslist. And the end result is that scalpers have made millions in profit, 43.2 million in fact, and the total sales on just eBay and StockX amounts to around 143 million. To make a long story short, the scalping situation has gotten worse and it's gotten out of hand, so it should come as no surprise that scalpers are being vilified because there are plenty of people trying to find these PlayStation 5s. It's enough of a struggle without the scalpers due to high demand and low supply, but scalpers are making the problem worse. Now, scalpers believe that the bad press they've been getting is completely undeserved because they're actually doing good in the world. They actually believe this, or some of them at least do. The following information was relayed by news outlet Forbes in an article titled "PlayStation 5 Scalpers Aren't Happy with Their Public Image." So Forbes actually managed to speak to a few scalpers who think that they're being treated too harshly by the internet and that they don't deserve the backlash that they've been getting. So scrolling down, here's a portion of the article that reads, "Scalpers I've spoken with say their intentions are misunderstood and their negative public image isn't justified." And this is a quote from Jordan, who co-founded The Lab, a private group that advises paying users on how to scalp. So he said, "There seems to be a lot of bad press on this incredibly valuable industry, and I do not feel that it is justified. All we are acting as is a middleman for limited quantity items." No, the middleman would be GameStop, Best Buy, Target, Walmart, whatever retailer sells these consoles. Sony sends the consoles to them, they act as the middleman, but then the scalpers come in, act as a secondary middleman that hoard the actual middleman's consoles that they're selling as part of an official deal with Sony. And then they're jacking up the prices by limiting the supply, making it all the less likely for your average customer to be able to find a PS5 or an Xbox Series. And they'll feel like they have no choice but to go to the scalper if they're desperate enough to play certain games right here, right now, or if a holiday's coming up and they want to gift it to a friend. They'll have no choice but to go through a scalper because the scalpers have made it thus. They're the ones who've created this issue, or at least exacerbated it. So for Jordan here, who is part of the problem, or who has exacerbated the problem, to say that we're just the middlemen, we're no different than a retail chain, is frankly a ridiculous and insulting argument. He straight up says right here that it is no different to how any other business operates. Essentially, every business resells their products. Tesco, for example, buys milk from farmers for 26 pence or so per liter and sells it on for upwards of 70 pence per liter. No one ever seems to complain to the extent as they're currently doing towards ourselves. The level of false equivalency here is astounding. Tesco is not going around hoarding all of the milk by buying them out with bots, cheating the system, and then jacking up the prices to a ridiculous degree. Obviously, businesses will buy in bulk to sell at a profit, but the difference is that with milk, for example, the supply does meet the demand. And so there's no hoarding going on, it's just convenience. Everyone's selling milk, all of the various food stores, food markets, grocery stores, whatever. When they sell the milk, they still sell at a reasonable enough price. 70 pence is something that most people can actually afford. Whereas with the PlayStation 5 situation, $500 is the MSRP. That's what's being sold across all of the actual middlemen, the Walmarts, the GameStops, the Best Buys, you name it. And then the scalpers are coming in, seeing how low the supply is and how high the demand is. They're coming in, buying everything out, and then saying, well, there's some interest if you want to buy through us. You're paying twice, 3 times the cost. $500 for a PS5 is already a significant expenditure for most people. Once you jack up those prices to $750, $1,000, we are already far beyond unreasonable territory. A more apt comparison would be if Tesco and all of these other retailers saw a third-party group buy out all of their milk and then start selling that milk on eBay or some kind of gray market at significantly jacked up prices. And I'm not the only one who thinks that that comparison was complete ass and utter delusion. In fact, Forbes reached out to some frustrated gamers and presented Jordan's analogy, and one of them said he is deluded, he doesn't get, he's another layer of profiteering in his own Tesco analogy. He's not Robin Hood. No, he is not, because what scalpers are doing by hoarding these PlayStation 5s and marking up the prices at ridiculous heights is essentially ensuring that only richer people can afford PlayStation 5s and screwing over people who may be able to afford a $400 to $500 PlayStation 5 but would be financially more constrained if they were to spend $750, $1,000 on a PlayStation 5. For many people, the difference between $500 and $750 is significant. It is huge, and $1,000 even more so. Now, some of the backlash that they got were straight up death threats, and that's a line that shouldn't be crossed. I understand the frustration against them, but sending death threats is literally illegal and a psychopathic thing to do. But as far as genuine expression of frustration and tangible criticism goes, ones that don't cross those lines, I think that's stuff that scalpers kind of ask for by doing what they're doing. From here, the article spotlights Scalper Group, The Lab, and one of Jordan's business partner, Reagan, who apparently showed Forbes a little bit of how they managed to use bots to make these purchases very, very quickly. So, for example, the fastest Forbes saw was a 2.3 seconds purchase of a Supreme X Smurfs skateboard, which, I don't know, maybe they're in limited supply. And just in general, bots will make purchases by the dozens before a human can make one, which puts the average customer at a significant disadvantage. And there's talk here of how the bot that they use, called Velox, can bypass the protocols and security measures put in place by these websites without much trouble. And scrolling down, Forbes managed to get a bit of a technical breakdown from one of the individuals they spoke with about how this bypass works. I'm not going to go through all that, but if you check out the article, you can read this on your own if you so desire. Down here, we got some information about the broader business of scalping, and scalpers do treat and operate as a business in some cases with full-time staff. Scalpers employ a lot of techniques to gain an advantage over regular buyers and other bot users. Jordan explained that because of bot competition, he has to be vigilant of opportunities. He said, "Our group monitors hundreds of websites waiting to notify members of restocks." So they've turned this into a career and profession. So on top of being, well, more on top of the restocks, whereas your average customer, they have a life, they can't keep track of the stock of PlayStation 5s all day. On top of all that, they also have the bots that, even for people who are on top of things with when restocks happen, the scalpers will have a huge advantage anyway, and may end up completely screwing those who were ready on the moment these restocks went live. We then get to see more signs of delusions of grandeur, with the article stating that both Reagan and Jordan say that they are ultimately helping people by giving them financial opportunities to resell consoles at an inflated price. And here's a quote, "I mainly just try and help others now. That's all that really matters to me. The whole group came about near the start of the first UK lockdown, and it makes me so happy that I can help people make some extra money for themselves." You're helping people make money by doing something really crappy, something that makes everyone else just a little more miserable. The fact remains that the business model of scalping is a scummy one. It is strong-arming people to shell out more money than they otherwise would need to, or than they otherwise would if given the option of actually buying the product at MSRP, but that choice becomes much less viable when scalpers are contributing to the problem. I am straight up reminded of microtransactions, which involve designing games and creating issues intentionally so that players have to buy the solution. Scalpers are doing the same on a macro level. They are creating the issue that's causing people to have issues buying the console, and so they're forced to rely on the scalpers selling of PS5s at marked up prices. And this justification right here, it's straight up corpo speak. It's like when game publishers say, oh, these are time savers. This is all to give players choice and options, for those who don't have the time to grind out the game, but who made the grind in the first place, who made the grind so unreasonable and insufferable that people feel strong arms to purchase those microtransactions to speed this along. Scalpers, you are pretending to be the solution of the problem that you're creating and or exacerbating. The scalpers then further proceed to make themselves out to be the good guys by stating we do a lot for charity as well. I myself, or collectively as a group, donate to charity almost monthly at this point. Most notably, over the past month, we donated a large portion of our membership fees to a food bank local to me. Now, here's something interesting. When asked for details about the food bank to confirm Reagan's donation and his contribution that he alleges, he didn't provide that information. It means nothing for you to just say that if you don't have the proof for it. But even if he did, the money that's being contributed to charity is money that was obtained through really crappy means that again came at the expense of others. Like if I took money that I earned selling illegal drugs on the street and contributed that to charity, that doesn't absolve me of the fact that that money was obtained in a very shady way. Not trying to say that scalping PS5s is equivalent to selling hardcore drugs on the streets or anything. I'm just making an exaggerated comparison so that people understand that there's still something wrong that they did in order to earn that money, and you can do what you want with that money. It doesn't wipe away the stains. And then finally, one more excuse that Forbes presented from the scalpers is that Reagan believes buyers will always struggle to find a PlayStation 5 anyway. Your average person who just wants one of the consoles to use struggles to get lost. A lot of these sites have very minimal or easy to bypass bot protection. They often release stocks at stupid times or without any form of schedule. A retailer I won't name released stock of the PlayStation 5s in the extremely early hours of the morning, which shows the lack of care on their part. The only people who will have known about those restocks will have been people with monitors inside of cook groups. I mean, there's some element of that is true. Retailers have not done enough to mitigate the situation. Even if there weren't scalpers, I think these websites are not set up properly. They don't have the proper process for millions of people flooding in to try to buy the same product. But that doesn't change the fact that scalpers are contributing to the issue. They've made it that much worse. If the scalpers weren't there, hundreds of thousands of these consoles would have gone out to actual customers. And at the very least, the competition, if you will, would have been fair. It would have been humans versus humans in terms of how fast you can purchase these things and, who's on top of it more. And they wouldn't be up against bots and software that are far superior to human beings as far as purchase speed goes. It is frustrating enough that scalpers are making the limited supply of next-gen console situation so much worse, but for them to try to come out and actually try to make the case that they're the good guys in any of this, that what they're doing is in any way like Robin Hood or in any way charitable, a force for good, it is straight up just insulting, especially with these asinine, just completely misguided comparisons. You're proud that you put some food on the table for some people? Fine. But you made life for others just a little worse. You did that. And if you can't acknowledge that, if you're really going to sit there and say, well, ultimately, we come out the good guys in all of this. If you cannot acknowledge the consequences of your actions and understand that what you're doing is pissing off and frustrating a lot of people, then you are even less respectable than you already were. There are people who are saving up, to buy a PlayStation 5 and reach that $500 and find some entertainment during these strange times when a pandemic is raging on and everyone is locked in at home. To do this, especially during this time, is especially shitty. Let's get one thing straight here. None of these scalping organizations are a charity organization. The end goal is profit, and if some of that profit goes to some charity or whatever, great, but it's about making money. It's about trying to get rich, or richer. It's business conducted by taking something rather than by giving something that people will find worthwhile, that they'll actually be happy about to spend money on. So that's one man's take on this whole situation. It's insulting enough the way scalpers conduct business, but to come out and provide these asinine justifications and comparisons that are completely devoid of any sound logic, that's all the more insulting. And I think scalpers are only going to see more bad press, more backlash as a result of their empty platitudes. But that's just me. Let me know in the comments below what you think about what scalpers had to say, the response that they provided to the backlash. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.